What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Another day, another purge. In Russia, repression used to be like a grim version of musical chairs game. Everyone kinda knew the rules. That was the unspoken deal. Play by the unholy rules of the Kremlin and you will be fine, kinda. But fast forward to Putin's third decade in power and the game has completely changed. No rules, no boundaries, just paranoia, insane one. Governors, rectors, generals, oligarchs, theater director, even the guy who probably thought his biggest crime was assigning bad seats in the opera hall, none of them is safe anymore. Today, the repression looks random, senseless, and above all terrifying, and that's exactly why it is effective. Has Putin become so paranoid that as little as minor inconvenience or misstep qualifies you for being purged Russian style? Well, it sure looks that way. And it is no longer even about people closest to the Kremlin. It's almost everyone who dares to give Putin a side eye. So today, let's dive into how the Kremlin's elite purge has turned into a feeding frenzy, how wealth became a curse, how paranoia replaced loyalty, how the entire ruling class became hostages of their own system, and why the steamroller that was supposed to crush everyone else has now circled back to flatten its own drivers. Once upon a time, the corruption in Putin's Russia was predictable. Everyone stole, everyone knew who stole, how much they stole, and everyone understood the boundaries. The system was not built on the rule of law, but on the rule of signals. The signal was simple. You can take your cut, but do not cross the invisible line into politics. That is why Khodorkovsky rotted in prison while his peers kept yachts and villas. That's why Gustinsky lost his media empire while other oligarchs prospered. The boundaries were harsh, but they kinda existed. Corruption was a racket everyone could live with, because the elite knew exactly what to avoid and what not to touch. But now, well, that world is long gone. Since Putin's inauguration in May 2024, we have seen 8 Ministry of Defense generals tossed in jail, 14 governors and vice governors, nearly 20 mayors, 10 rectors, 3 oligarchs, 2 theater directors, 3 prosecutors, and even 1 minister who decided to just skip humiliation and he pulled the trigger himself. And that's just the highlight reel, just what they show us on TV. If you counted every vice mayor, every faceless department head, every middle tier paper shuffler who found himself prosecuted or stripped of property, well, the list that then would just stretch beyond people's comprehension. Thousands names, hundreds of thousands possibly. What do these people have in common? Well, nothing much. Except that they all once believed they were untouchable because they worked for the Kremlin. Some really close, some in far distant regions. That belief was the glue holding the entire kleptocratic pyramid together, and once that glue dissolved, the pyramid started devouring its own bricks. The randomness is the real weapon here. Yesterday's rule book, which is basically don't build your own political party, don't fund the opposition, don't run a casino without sharing the profits, well, this rule book is useless now. Today, the biggest change here was the attitude towards money, because just like almost anywhere else in the world, if you have lots of it, 99% of at least your legal problems can be solved. But that changed in Putin's Russia. Did they finally defeat the corruption? Or something more sinister happened? Let's talk about it in our next chapter. Let's talk about the cruelest irony in this whole circus. In Putin's Russia, the very thing that once guaranteed your protection, money, has now become your greatest liability. Just think about it. For a long time it worked. The Kremlin did not care about the theft as long as you bend the knee. The money made you valuable. The money bought loyalty. The money bought even security. But when war drained the treasury at the speed of $300 million per day, according to the most conservative estimations, well, those billions start to look less like trophies and more like a bait. The state doesn't just know about these hidden fortunes. It needs them. It wants them. That's why Mashkovich, worth $2.5 billion, suddenly finds himself bargaining for his freedom in the detention cell. That's why governors with real estate empires are stripped of hundreds of properties overnight. The elite are learning what ordinary Russians already knew. Nothing in Russia is truly yours. Not your money, not your property, not even your life in some cases. It all belongs to the state, and the state can take it back whenever it feels like it. And don't think this logic applies only to billionaires. The rector accused of petty bribes, barely enough to buy a used smartphone, ended up in the very same cells as men who stole fortunes. Why? Because the system is not about scales anymore. It's about demonstrating that wealth of any kind, influence of any degree, attracts predators. The richer you are, the bigger the target painted on your back. The poorer you are, the easier you are to crush. There is no safe zone in between, no middle ground, no amount to steal that is not going to raise eyebrows. Wealth has transformed from a shield into a neon sign flashing, literally saying, "Take me next." And the elites, once obsessed with showing off their riches, are now learning to fear them. Because even those people who give bribes in the first place learn that they have now the upper hand. They are the ones who can blackmail another person. Because they can always go to the police and leave some kind of an anonymous tip that somebody just acquired a lot of illegal cash. And the police will be more than happy to arrest that person, rather than to spend all the time and resources to find the source of cash in the first place. It's all about the theatrical prosecution for the TV propaganda, not an actual justice. But why all this is happening in Putin's Russia? Why equally parade and humiliate on TV people who took $1,500 and who took $1.5 million? The answer is rather simple. Insane paranoia of the regime itself. Let's talk about it in more details now in the next chapter. If you're still trying to make sense of the rest, just stop. That is the point. You're not supposed to make sense of it. This purge is not about corruption, loyalty, or ideology. It's about paranoia. The system wants its elites trapped in a state of permanent insecurity, never knowing if tomorrow brings a medal or a prison sentence. Fear is the currency now, not money, not loyalty, not service. Fear controls way better than gold. Just once again, think about it. If you're a governor and you know that even building fortifications will not save you because you might get accused of stealing, 50 pounds of cement, well, how do you behave then? And you might not actually even steal it. All it takes is someone to say you stole it, and that's it. If you're a general and you know that your colleagues are being deported to Siberia for not so voluntarily vacations, for bribes that everyone takes, well, how do you then dare to show ambition? If you're a theater director and your crime is a renovation contract gone bad, do you even dare to keep renovating in the future? You just abandoned your theater and that's it. The answer is obvious. You just live in terror. You overcompensate in loyalty. You look at your neighbor and wonder when it will be your turn. You keep your bags packed, but you don't dare to flee, because flight is its own death sentence. Only those who know they are guilty are on the run, right? Paranoia seeps into every corridor of power, every lavish office, every luxury dacha at this point. And that paranoia is a policy. A state at war does not want confident elites. It was anxious ones. An elite who thinks he is safe becomes dangerous. He starts building networks, plotting succession, or worse, imagining himself as Putin's heir, the worst crime of them all. An elite who knows he could be crushed tomorrow for reasons he doesn't understand, well then he will not even dare to whisper the word succession, even to his own kid. He'll sit quietly, trembling, counting down the days until the investigators knock on the door, and that's pretty much it. In this way, paranoia becomes the regime's most reliable weapon. It does not matter if the arrests are justified, logical, or even coherent. Their very randomness is what makes them effective. The final irony is almost too delicious, so that's why I saved it for last. For years, Russia's elites operated the so-called steamroller. They flattened ordinary citizens, crushed opposition activists, buried journalists, and exiled critics. They thought they were the ones in control of the machine, but now they are finding out they were never the drivers. They were passengers, and the driver is only one single insanely paranoid old boss in the Kremlin. And now the steamroller has turned around, and it's flattening them instead. Just take a look at all these titles. Governors stripped of fortunes, generals dragged away in handcuffs, oligarchs bargaining for their lives, famous artists humiliated with absurd charges. These are not opposition activists or foreign agents. These are the regime's own children, raised on the milk of corruption, fattened by the same state they served. And yet, they are now reduced to the same level as the people they once oppressed. powerless, disposable, and irrelevant. That is the ultimate betrayal for them. They thought they were protected by the unspoken agreements, by some kind of whispered promises in the Kremlin corridors. But these promises are not legal contracts, and verbal agreements are only as good as both sides follow them. When one side decides to break them, what else can you do? Nothing. When the system decides you are expendable, no memory of past service will save you. The very lawlessness they once cheered has now devoured them. What we are witnessing is not an anti-corruption campaign. It is not justice. It is not even strategy. It is the logical end of a system that traded the rule of law for the rule of paranoia. When the system runs out of money, runs out of victories, runs out of patience and innocent people to blame, it starts feeding on itself. That is what is happening right now. Russia's elites, once smug in their untouchable palaces, are discovering they are just as vulnerable as the peasants they despised. Maybe even more so, because they are much bigger and much more nutritious targets. The tragedy is that ordinary Russians will not benefit from this chaos. But since when Putin cared about regular people anyways? Their lives will not improve just because a billionaire lost his company or a governor lost his mansion. The regime is not about to redistribute wealth or anything like this. No, of course, it is just confiscating it for itself, to fund the war most likely. The oppression is not cleansing corruption, it's weaponizing it. And the only lesson left is the oldest one in history. When you build a system without universal rules, eventually it swallows everyone, high and low. The steamroller does not stop, it just changes direction. And now it's heading straight for them. Well, right, guys, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work and help us stay independent in our reports, the best way to do is through Patreon memberships. Link is down below. There's some additional bonus content at the end of each chapter. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are resolve they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.